Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another daily dose of Commander Legends Battle for Baldur Gate spoilers, and we got some really spicy stuff to talk about today, which means we should probably jump right into it, start talking sweet new cards. Before we do, a couple of quick reminders. Number one, to keep up on all the latest spoilers throughout the day, head on over to MTGpreviews.com. Number two, if you need some Commander Legends cards, or really any cards, you can get them from our amazing sponsor, Card Kingdom, over at cardkingdom.com/MTGGoldfish. And number three, if you want even more great Commander content, make sure to check out the MTGGoldfish Commander YouTube. Anyway, let's talk Commander Legends 2 Battle for Baldur's Gate. So oddly, the card I'm most hyped about today is actually a random uncommon, and that is Gone Gate. Gone Gate is a gate land that says gates you control enter the battlefield untapped. It taps to add a colorless or a mana for any color a gate you control could produce. So this is essentially Amulet of Vigor, 4 gates mixed with a Gate Plaza of Harmony. This land is actually absurd. This is maybe the new best gate. I don't know, I guess it's in competition with Baldur's Gate. Baldur's Gate's also kind of insane as a gate Cabal coffers, but Gone Gate is exactly what you want out of a gate land. The biggest problem with a gate mana base is that all the lands come into play tapped, which really slows you down. Gone Gate solves that problem while also being a gate itself, and also potentially being a 5-color gate once it gets going. This is a really absurd card, and I think this card might make it correct for budget decks to just always build a gate mana base. Doubly so when you consider how many ways there are to tutor this up in a gate deck. You got Maze's End, of course, Open the Gates, Gate Creeper Vine, District Guide, Circuitia's Route. You have a ton of different ways that you can find this, so you should pretty consistently be able to get this on the battlefield early in the game, and then all of a sudden, your gates are absurd. They turn into real dual lands, like improved shock lands, and this gives you a 5-color land, a City of Brass, essentially, with no pain attached to it. This card is so good. So I am incredibly hyped for Gone Gate. I think the part of Commander Legends 2 I personally am most excited about is really this new gate package, and I think they said there were 9 or 10 gates altogether, so we know we still got a whole bunch more of these coming. So I would say get your gate stuff now. Like, thankfully most of the gates are just random commons that have been reprinted several times, so it shouldn't be too hard to get those. Maze's End might get a little bit expensive, but really if you're a budget player, I think because of these new gates are going to be the best way to build your mana base, which is a huge deal. This new gate package combined with the old gates is going to let your gate mana base compete with tier mana bases of fetch lands and shock lands and so forth, which is a huge deal for budget players. We also got a new mythic background legend in Karlach, Fury of Avernus, a 5-mana 5/4 Tiefling Barbarian that says whenever you attack, if it's the first combat phase of the turn, untap all attacking creatures, they get first strike, and there's an additional combat phase, plus it has background so you can pair it with a background to get in multiple colors. This reminds me a little bit of Aurelia, and I think it's going to play kind of like Aurelia. Aurelia, a hasty attacker that gives you an extra combat phase, not super popular as a commander, kind of a mid-tier, maybe upper mid-tier commander, but it's a pretty popular 99 card in decks that care about attacking, and I think that's most likely what Karlach is going to be as well. There are ways to build around as your commander, but I mostly think this is a good 99 card. Important to note that Karlach is worded like Adeleine. It does not need to attack, it just needs something to attack. So what this means is you can build a board, and you can play Karlach from the command zone or from the 99, attack with another creature, and still get that extra combat phase, which is really powerful. Like, that's a big part of what makes Adeleine such a powerful threat, and Karlach is worded in the same exact way. As far as building around this as your commander, I couldn't find anything like specifically awesome as a background to pair with this. I guess it works fine with things that can pump creatures, things that can make your creatures evasive, things that can make creatures like Foulwild Visitor, but really there's no all-star pairing for Karlach. As I mentioned before, I'm mostly excited to play this as a 99 card. Like, jam this in Ishin, jam this in Iroas, maybe a Chroma Rogak piles. I think that's where it's going to be at its best, although it is worth pointing out we keep getting a ton of these extra combat step creatures. Like, we have so many of them now, and I think Karlach is one of the better ones, specifically because of that Adeleine wording. Like, if you compare this to Port Razor needs to attack, or Combat Celebrant, or Scourge of the Throats, they all need to attack. Morag, pretty busted. That one might actually be better than Karlach, but I think this might be like the second best version, especially if you're not trying to go infinite with Godo or something. So if you want an extra combat step on a creature in your deck because you're playing Ishin or something, Karlach Backlash is a great option, and if you want extra combat steps from your command zone and don't want to be a Najeela player, I think this is a pretty fine option there as well. We also got another new background commander in Shadowheart Dark Justiciar, a 4-mana 3/4 legendary human elf cleric with pay 2 tap it, sack another creature, draw X cards where X is its power, and of course you get to choose a background, so you can be 2 colors. This is kind of like a twist on Disciple of Bolas. Disciple of Bolas kind of does the same thing with the ETB trigger. The upside of Shadowheart is it's repeatable. The downside is it costs mana and you don't get to gain life, and it has to be unsummoning sick to work. Disciple of Bolas just comes down, sacks something, refills your hand. Shadowheart, you do gotta wait a turn or give it haste to really take advantage of it. As far as pairing this with a background, I'm not really sure the best way to go with this. We do have a bunch of mono black backgrounds that seem to work well with it if you want to go into some sort of aristocrat style deck like Agent of the Iron Throne. Gonna give you some damage like a Blood Artist effect if stuff is sacrificed, or Cultist of the Absolute also cares about sacrificing things. Criminal Pass gives you benefit for having creatures in your graveyard to grow a big Shadowheart, or you go multicolor for like Master Chef to add counters to your stuff to draw more cards, or Noble Heritage. So there's a bunch of different options if you want to play this as your commander. I think the other thing you can do with this card is just try to sack big creatures. You can play as your commander and try to sack like Phyrexian Dreadnoughts to draw 12 cards, or play it in the 99 of commanders that can grow big creatures or are big themselves, like Yargles in 9/3. You play this, you sack your Yargle, you refill your hand. Varls can build some big creatures. Hogak, usually really cheap and repeatable as a draw 8, so it's got potential there as well. Also worth mentioning that it has 2 relevant creature types. Well, actually 3, human, elf, and cleric, but I think I'm most interested in the elf and cleric part of this card. It works really well in an Aura deck. Aura wants things to be sacrificed, so a good source of card advantage with Aura. Also, there's some elf decks that either are really big, like Abomination of Llanowar gets huge, and then you sack it and draw like 20 cards, or you play it in like aristocrat style elves with Mara. So there's a bunch of tribal options here as well. And another way to build around this that I think would be really fun is to pair it with a red background and go like threaten tribal. Try to steal your opponent's creatures. We got Firebog Flottis now is another great option for stealing your opponent's creatures. The only problem is we've only seen a single red background so far, and that's Guild Artisan, and Guild Artisan isn't really something that works specifically with Shadowheart, so we'll have to wait and see. If we can get the right background to build like a Mardu Threaten deck, this could actually be a really sweet commander. Also seems good in the 99 of various sacrifice-based decks. Like, the first one that came to mind for me is Henzi Toolbox Tori. Henzi, really good at blitzing big things into play. The problem is when you blitz something, it's going to die at the end of turn anyway, but if you have Shadowheart, you can blitz something on the cheap with Henzi and then sacrifice it to draw cards and get another card from blitzing. Also probably fine in just like Jury or Carvold. Any sacrifice decks is another sacrifice outlet and a source of card advantage. So Shadowheart Dark Justiciar seems like a really solid card. I could definitely see playing this in the 99 in a bunch of different decks, and if we get the right background, it could be a pretty good commander too. Speaking of new legends, we also got a Mardu Sacrifice Treasure commander in Jansen Chaos Crafter, a 3-mana Mardu 3/3 Gnome Artificer with haste that has tap second artifact creature, make 2 treasures, or tap sack a non-creature artifact, make 2 1/1 colorless construct artifact creature tokens. So on level 1, this is kind of a sweet, just Mardu Aristocrats or fair treasure commander. Not going to be as busted as something like Prosper, most likely. But I think what people are most hyped for about Jansen is its combo potential. If you can find a way to keep untapping this kind of can go infinite with itself. It makes creatures that you can sacrifice to make treasures, and then you sack the treasures to make creatures. So I think there's a few different ways of maybe doing this. If you can have Jansen, Thornbite Staff in a free sack out, like Ashnod's Altar. I know. Another Ashnod's Altar combo. There are ways to go infinite. You can like Jansen, sacrifice a artifact creature to make 2 treasures. The artifact creature dying will untap Jansen because of Thornbite Staff, and you're gonna have 2 treasures. Then you can tap Jansen to sacrifice one of the 2 treasures to make 2 constructs. It's gonna stay tapped because a non-creature artifact dying isn't gonna untap it, but then you can sacrifice one of the constructs to Ashnod's Altar to take and untap Jansen and make some mana. Then you can tap Jansen to sacrifice the other construct to make treasures and untap it, and then go through that loop again. So by itself, that's going to give you infinite Ashnod's Altar mana, and then it's also going to give you infinite death triggers, infinite enter the battlefield triggers, and if you throw another piece into the puzzle, like a Zorn or Anointed Procession, then you just go infinite in a whole bunch of different ways. Another easy way to go infinite with Jansen is turning it into an artifact and then using Clock of Omens. So if you can like Liquid Metal Coating or Liquid Metal Torque, then this becomes very easy because Clock of Omens lets you tap 2 untapped artifacts to untap an artifact. So that means you can activate Jansen to make 2 artifacts and then tap those artifacts to untap Jansen. And then again, you can sacrifice an artifact to make 2 more artifacts and then untap it with Clock of Omens, go infinite with treasures, go infinite with 1/1s. Draw Scorpion can also work in this mix as another untapper as you're taking and tapping and untapping stuff. So I think that's going to be maybe the most popular way to build Jansen. These unfair infinite combos, thankfully they're like 3+ pieces, so I don't think they're going to be super busted, but it's worth keeping in mind just because one of the pieces is coming from your command zone. Also, as I mentioned before, it's also just a fine, fairish, like artifact token aristocrat commander. Play your Zorns and Anointed Processions and kind of just play this for value even without the infinite untap shenanigans, and make a bunch of tokens and you get a bunch of mana and you get a bunch of 1/1s, and I don't know, throw some Disciple of the Vaults into the mix or something to be able to drain your opponent out of the game. Seems like a fun, fair way to play this card. So Jansen, I think this is not a busted artifact commander because its combos do take 3 pieces, but it is a really fun card to build around. And if you're looking for a treasure or Mardu token commander that maybe won't get you immediately hated out of the game, this seems like a pretty good option. We also got an interesting new uncommon commander in Cadira, Caller of the Small, a 3-mana 3/3 Orc Ranger with trample that when it deals damage to a player, combat damage, for each token you control, you get a 1/1 white rabbit creature token. So Cadira, if you want to play Rabbit Tribal, you now have a commander. We have like 5 rabbits or something in all of Magic, including Jackalope Herd. I've always wanted to build a Jackalope Herd deck. So if you want to build super janky Rabbit Tribal, throw in some tokens. This gives you a way to get it done. Also, kind of just a powerful card in a token deck. The only problem is for this to work, you got to be hitting your opponent with a 3/3. So you're going to have to build around getting in with Cadira. On the other hand, if you can do that and you got a bunch of tokens in your deck, you're getting this like second harvest effect almost, Reese the Redeem, where you're essentially doubling up your tokens. You're doubling up in the form of 1/1 rabbits, but still, you're going to be adding a lot of bodies to the battlefield. Also worth mentioning, this is another commander that doesn't specify creature tokens. So this opens up possibilities of like Bootlegger Stash to make a ton of treasures, Smothering Tithe to make a ton of treasures, and then using Cadria to like convert those treasures into creature tokens. Almost similar to Ginny Fae, except you also get to keep your treasure tokens. So that's another way to build around this, is non-creature tokens, and then play like Cadria Voltron to try to make a bunch of 1/1 rabbits and win the game. Also, finally answers the question, how many rabbits does it take to take down an Emrakul? We know how many squirrels it takes, but rabbits, we haven't answered this one yet, so now we get to find out. Anyway, that is Cadria. Kind of an interesting uncommon commander, but we'll have to wait and see. Needing to deal combat damage is a little bit sketchy, but if you can pull it off, it is very powerful. We also got a new white background commander, another uncommon in Rasaad, a 3-mana 0/3 human monk that makes each creature you control assign combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power, and when it attacks, if you have the initiative, you double the toughness of each creature you control. So this is another Butts commander. Arcades, Doran, E Honda, these are all toughness matter commanders. I don't think that Rasaad is quite as strong. The biggest thing it's missing is the ability to make walls a tap like Arcades, so you gotta play high toughness non-wall creatures or play Rolling Stones, other ways to let your walls attack. But still, the combination of allowing your high toughness creatures to deal damage with their toughness instead of their power, and potentially the ability to double up their power, giving you this built-in tower defense, makes it a pretty powerful card. I don't know if this is a card that I would build around as my commander. We'll have to wait and see. I look through the backgrounds. There's nothing that specifically cares about toughness. I guess you can just play some random creature pumping background or something. But in the 99 of other toughness matters, it seems like a good option. And if you can keep the initiative, which might be a bit of a challenge, we've seen that with the Monarch. When you get the Monarchy, you're normally going to get attacked and lose it, so you're not going to have it when you go to attacks on your turn. But if you can build your deck to keep the initiative, this is actually a very powerful payoff in a deck with a bunch of high toughness creatures. commanders. We also got a really interesting new Simic commander. I know, interesting Simic commander. Normally those words don't go together, but Alaundo the Seer is actually a pretty spicy one. Tap to draw a card, then exile a card from your hand and put a number of time counters on it equal to its mana value it gains when the last time counter is removed from this card. If it's exiled, you may cast that card without paying a mana cost. If it's a creature, it gains haste, and then remove a time counter from each other card you own in exile. That's a lot of text. So essentially you loot and you suspend the thing you loot away, but not really suspend. You're pseudo-suspend. It doesn't actually say suspend. And then you get to remove time counters from things. If I'm understanding this card correctly, because it doesn't actually give the card that you pseudo-suspend suspend, the only way to remove the time counters from that card is going to be tapping Alaundo. You're not going to be able to remove them naturally turn by turn like a suspend card. So that's something worth keeping in mind. On the other hand, this card can be incredibly powerful. We only have one other suspend commander, and it's Joyra the Gitu. And the problem with Joyra is just absolutely busted. Like, it is going to draw hate because the way people build Joyra is just play a bunch of big Eldrazi and try to suspend them as quickly as possible. And the only way to get out from under that is pretty much kill the Joyra player. So Joyra draws a lot of heat. Alaundo, I don't think it's going to draw as much heat. It's a much fairer, but still very value-filled style of suspend commander. So it does work well with suspend stuff. One of the upsides of Alaundo is when you tap it, you're going to remove a time counter from each card that you own in exile. So this doesn't just include the cards that you pseudo-suspend with Alaundo itself, but it also includes any suspend cards. So if you're playing Reality Strobes and Inspiring Refrains or Riftwing Cloud's Gates, whatever, this is a great payoff. So this is like a suspend tribal card because you can suspend or pseudo-suspend some cards with your commander that don't have suspend, and then you can play actual suspend cards and remove time counters to get them quicker, especially good with Inspiring Refrains, Reality Strobes, which keep coming back every turn. If you're drawing two or bouncing something every turn, it becomes even more powerful. I did want to mention how this works with no mana cost suspend stuff. It doesn't actually work at all, because if you Alaundo, and let's say put it Ancestral Visions into exile with its ability, it's going to have 0 time counters. And remember, the way you get to cast the cards with time counters is when their last time counter is removed. So if you got no time counters, that last time counter is never going to get removed. So it still works with these 0 mana cost cards, but you have to suspend them naturally. So you have to like Ancestral Vision, pay the blue, suspend 4, and then you can use Alaundo to remove the counters and speed it up, but don't use Alaundo's ability to exile free cards with no mana cost, because it's not going to do what you want it to do. Those cards are just going to be lost forever to suspend. The other awkward part about this is because Alaundo's ability doesn't actually suspend the cards, but instead gives them time counters and weird not suspend, it doesn't actually synergize with stuff that specifically references suspend. Like Timebender can remove time counters from suspended cards. Clock Spinning can remove time counters from suspended cards. Alaundo doesn't suspend cards, so even though you're giving them time counters, they're not suspended, which means Clock Spinning, while you still might play it in Alaundo deck because you're probably going to have other real suspend cards, it's not going to help you speed up the cards that you exile to Alaundo's ability. So there's a lot of weird stuff going on with this card. Also, there's some pretty easy ways to kind of go through your entire deck with this. One easy way, like Penman's Aura, Freed from the Real, these enchantments let you untap Alaundo for 1 mana. So the idea is, you tap Alaundo, you pseudo-suspend a card, you pay 1 to untap it, and if you can fill your suspend zone, or exile zone, I guess, with cards that can untap your lands to make mana, then you can just go kind of infinite. Like you suspend Rude Awakening with Alaundo's ability, it's going to have 5 time counters. If you got 5 mana, you can tap and untap Alaundo at least 5 times, and then you're going to get the Rude Awakening off of suspend, that's going to untap all your lands, and then you do it again, and then you hope that you hit a Treachery, let's say, and after 5 more activations, you get that, you untap 5 lands, then you do it again, and you hit a Turnabout, and then you do it again, and you hit 5 lands. So I think Penman's or Freed from the Real are going to be all-stars in this deck. There's probably also a way to do this with really cheap creatures in Intruder Alarm. If you can like suspend a Birds of Paradise, and then have a creature come into play to untap Alaundo, then you tap Alaundo, you'll get the Birds of Paradise, that'll come down, that'll untap Alaundo because of Intruder Alarm, then you can like get a Llanowar Elves and do it again and do it again and just cycle through your deck that way. So really interesting card. Also, of course, Isochron Scepter Dramatic Reversal. The problem I have with this though is that just goes infinite in a whole bunch of different ways. Like you don't need Alaundo there. You can definitely throw it in your Alaundo deck as another way to draw your entire deck, play your entire deck with Alaundo, but really the power of that combo is going infinite with Dramatic Reversal, Isochron Scepter Scepter, if you're doing that and making infinite mana and all this stuff, you're probably winning anyway. It's cool that you get to draw your entire deck and play your entire deck with Alaundo, but really the power is the Scepter Dramatic Reversal combo, not Alaundo. But I really like Alaundo. You can play this low powered as a suspend commander, play it fairly, or you can go all in on going infinite with it, with the Penman's Aura, with Intruder Alarms, and just try to turn this into a play my entire deck for free by tapping and untapping my Commander Legend, and that seems pretty spicy too. We also got a few lower rarity backgrounds. Want to go through quickly. Shadow Thief Operative seems pretty bad to me. Gives your commander creatures, when it attacks, if it attacks the opponent who has the most life, you put a +1/+1 counter on the creature, and it gains Death Touch and Indestructible. So I guess you could play this in some sort of Voltron deck. The only thing is Black's got a bunch of these Voltron-y style backgrounds. Criminal Past, Cultist to the Absolute, and I'm honestly not sure Shadow Thief Operative is better than either of those other two, so probably fine for limited. But even if you want to go background and you want to go Voltron, I think there's just better options for most 100-card commander decks. We also got Veteran Soldier, a background that essentially turns any of your commanders into an Adeline as long as you attack the player that has the most life. So you get a bunch of tokens. I mean, I guess it's a fine token option. It's kind of cute with like Haslin. You can turn your tokens into 4/4s, so you make a bunch of 1/1s and then upgrade them, or maybe Karlach just to go wide and make a bunch of creatures. The more things you have attacking, the better in extra combat phases. So we'll have to wait and see. Definitely seems very strong and limited, and we've seen Adeline's ability be really, really good. Is it worth playing a random background commander to make it work? We'll have to wait and see. We also got Agent of the Iron Throne, which is actually one of the backgrounds I'm most excited about. A 3-mana black background enchantment that says commander creatures you don't have. Whenever an artifact or creature you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, each opponent loses a life. So this is like a Blood Artist mixed with the Disciple of the Vault, mixed with Bastion of Remembrance, since it's a 3-mana enchantment. Essentially, you're not going to gain life, but you're going to drain each opponent anytime an artifact or creature dies. So you're not going to gain life, but you're going to drain each opponent every time an artifact or creature you control dies. So we have plenty of Blood Artist effects. You probably don't really need Agent of Iron Throne as another Blood Artist, but we don't have that many Disciple of the Vault effects that trigger based on artifacts, and I think that's where Agent of the Throne's gonna shine. So you can play this in just a sacrifice deck like Corvald as a Blood Artist, that's fine, but I'm mostly excited to play this in like treasure style decks, is another Marionette Master, is another Disciple of the Vault. So if you have Agnes, or Vazzy, or Eloise, this is another way to win when you go infinite with Eloise, or Prosper, that can make a bunch of treasures. This is actually a really scary card. It's not that hard to make enough treasures, so you can just start draining the table out of the game. So I actually think this is one of the few backgrounds that I'm actually kind of hyped to just jam in the 99, especially in decks that care about artifacts leaving the battlefield, like treasure decks, but it's probably okay as like a bad Blood Artist in creature sacrifice Corvald style decks as well. We also got Minthara Ruthless Soul, a new uncommon Orzhov 2/2 legendary elf cleric. It has War decks where X is the number of experience counters you have, and the beginning or end step, if a permanent you control left the battlefield, like you crack a fetch or something, you get an experience counter, and then creatures you control get +1/+0 for each experience counter you have. So Minthara, honestly, building around this as my commander, not super hyped. It seems a little boring. It's just pumping your creatures. On the other hand, it is a way to gain experience counters, and remember, experience counters don't really care where you get them from. So if you're playing something like Daxos, or you're playing something like Kelsien, I could definitely see you playing Minthara in the 99, just because it's another way that every turn you can crack a fetch or have a creature die and get another experience counter, which is then going to benefit your Daxos, or then going to benefit your Kelsien. We also got another red background in Dragon Cultist. 5 mana, says commander creatures you don't have. At the beginning or end step, if a source you control dealt 5 or more damage this turn, create a 4/4 red dragon creature token with flying. So Dragon Cultist seems designed to work with Skanos specifically. If you want to build like an uncommon Gruul dragon style deck, Skanos is going to be big enough as long as you have any dragon really to hit someone for at least 5 damage. Then you get a 4/4 dragon every single turn. That seems pretty powerful. Also probably good and limited. Could also go Levon, I guess, in some sort of dragon spellslinger prowess style deck, although that's kind of a weird matchup outside of kind of lower power decks and limited. I'm not sure this is a card I would play in most dragon decks. I think the problem I have with, again, all of these dragon-focused backgrounds is most dragon commanders are just really expensive, and because this is giving your commander that ability, it's really a late game thing. Like, by the time you got Dragon down, do you really need a random 4/4 dragon on your end step? I mean, you're not going to complain, but you got to pay 5 mana to get the enchantment on the battlefield, so I'm not really sure it's worth it. Maybe if you're playing a more low-to-the-ground dragon deck that can get your commander going early, it could be good, or if you just want to play it for fun, obviously, like, play whatever you like, it's commander, but I would say I wouldn't include this in something like Tiamat or Dragon or even Lathless. It just feels way too slow for me. But if you're intentionally trying to build a background style dragon deck, or you just are playing, I don't know, Artisan Commander or something, only commons and uncommons, that's where I think this could shine, along with probably being pretty sweet and limited in some sort of Gruul Dragon archetype. We also got a couple of reprints, although nothing super exciting. 2 random uncommons, Treasure Keeper and Geode Golem. Geode Golem, actually worth a little bit, a couple of bucks. It hasn't been reprinted that much yet, and it does see a bit of commander play, especially with big expensive commanders. The first time it hits your opponent for combat damage, you essentially get to play your commander for free, which is kind of absurd, especially if you're playing some huge Eldrazi as your commander or Dragon or something. Although it is worth mentioning, you still got to pay the command tax. So if you've already cast your commander a couple of times, it does get a little worse, although it's still a ramp spell. If you got a 10 mana commander, this is essentially giving you a 10 mana discount on casting it, even if you got to pay the command tax and spend some mana, which is pretty sweet. So only a couple bucks, but I don't know, who's going to complain about opening a $2 uncommon? Plus, probably going to be a fun option for limited in a set like this where it's all about getting your commanders on the battlefield. We also got just a bunch of lower rarity stuff that is mostly just draft to heft. I don't think anyone's really going to play it in full-on commander. Thrakis in the bottom right, kind of a cool dragon card. It doubles the power of your dragons whenever it attacks, but still, that's pretty slow, maybe in like Artisan Commander or something. And then we did get Sword Coast Sailor, which is kind of an interesting background for Voltron style decks. Whenever your commander attacks, if it attacks the player with the most life, it gets unblockable. So if you're trying to one-shot people with some sort of Voltron commander, could be a good addition there. But remember, it's blue. There's a lot of ways to give a creature unblockable in blue, so whether or not it's actually worth it in the 99, that remains to be seen. Anyway, that brings us to the end of our daily Commander Legends Battle for Baldur Gate spoilers for today. So what do you think? What are you most hyped for? What are you looking forward to? We're through one-ish week of spoilers. What do you think of this set so far? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be back tomorrow with more daily Commander Legends Battle for Baldur Gate spoilers. So until then, have a great one, everyone, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.